Welcome to this conversation of the Air Cargo Caucus. We're very excited to be with you this afternoon. My name is Rosario Palmieri, and I'm the Government Affairs Director for the CLDA, the Customized Logistics and Delivery Association, a nonprofit trade association that advances the interests of the customized logistics and delivery industry. We're very grateful to the Air Cargo Caucus co-chairs, members, and staff for offering us this opportunity to address you all, talk a bit about the organization and how diverse segments of the air cargo industry interface with each other. And I want to just begin by introducing one of the co-chairs of the Air Cargo Caucus, U.S. Congresswoman Cheri Bustos, who represents the 17th District of Illinois, which includes Rockford, Freeport, the Quad Cities, Peoria, and hundreds of other communities in between, currently serving her 5th term in office. She's a member of House Democratic leadership with appointments to a number of important committees, including the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. And prior to joining Congress, she spent nearly 2 decades as a journalist with the Quad City Times. We're very excited to have her with us, and thank you very much for offering us this opportunity to speak with everyone. So, Congressman Bustos, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks very much, Rosario, and it's good to be with everybody. And also want to thank you, Rosario, and your team for helping to organize this briefing, and to the panelists. And I think Congressman Brian Mast, who is the co-chair of our caucus, has already headed over to the House floor. We're going to be called for votes in just a little bit. But let me just start with a very quick hello and tell you a little bit about the Air Cargo Caucus, just very briefly. So I helped create this caucus last Congress, so the last session of Congress. And we actually created it with a congressman who just passed away not too long ago. His name was Paul Mitchell, and he was a great co-chair, and we miss him, but very, very glad to have Brian Mast as part of this now. But the reason we started this is because it was really important that the caucus serve as a bipartisan space. Very, very important. I'm a Democrat in a district that Donald Trump won, not once, but twice, in 2016 and in 2020. Brian Mast, and then before that, Paul Mitchell is a Republican. So it is very important to us that we come together, and then specific to this, that we learn about the importance of the air cargo industry. So when we founded this, we knew that air cargo, that the entire industry is responsible for creating millions of jobs. And obviously the movement of goods and its impact on the economy makes what you do for a living very, very important. We saw what happened during the pandemic and how it proved to be what you do for a living. We knew from that it's so essential that we can get cargo where it needs to go. We know that logistics matter. We know whether it was delivering the personal protection equipment to handling the online sales that just exploded, that the air cargo industry has been critical to all of that. And you guys were there for all of that. One quick local example and why this is so important to me. The congressional district I represent covers the entire northwestern corner of the state of Illinois. Rosario mentioned the different communities. One of those communities, Rockford, has the Chicago Rockford International Airport there. And it was the fastest growing cargo airport in the world from 2018 to 2019, in the world. And then from 2019 to 2020, even saw a 25% year over year growth. Obviously driven so much by what we were just talking about, what the pandemic brought on. So, it's those kind of numbers that make the operations at any of the airports that have cargo really these economic drivers. And so that's why, as members of Congress, we want to make sure that our colleagues as members of Congress understand the importance of air cargo. So we think that you guys are all in the right place for what needs to happen in the future. And again, as I close out and head over to the House floor, let me just say how grateful I am to all of you for helping our nation and frankly, our world navigate this extremely complex time. You are, you really are in a critical place at a critical time. And I see nothing but a great future for all of you. So I'm grateful to Brian for being my co-chair. I'm sorry he couldn't be with us for right now, but maybe you guys can meet him a little bit later. Rosario, with that, I will turn it back over to you. If you're there.
You're on mute, Rosario.
There we go.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very
Thank you so
powerful.
much, Congresswoman. We really appreciate your service and your leadership on this issue and so many others. And thank you for helping us set the right tone for this
You bet.
conversation. We really
I'll see
appreciate
you guys again soon. Thank you.
it. Excellent. If Congressman Mast is able to join us, we'll introduce him as we go. But just as a point of reference, Congressman Mast represents the 18th congressional district of Florida, and is a credit to this nation and his constituents. Served admirably in in the military and in Afghanistan, and served and has a number of expertises where he's offered his service to both the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Department of Homeland Security, the Israeli Defense Forces, and now in Congress into this caucus. So we'll be lucky to have him and his expertise and service with us as well. And we'll go ahead and get started with our panel. I want to first introduce all three members of our panel today, and then we'll have them start presentations. The first you'll hear from today is Ralph Carruthers, who's the president of On the Go Cargo. He's got more than 39 years of logistics and transportation experience on the ground, in the air, and the ocean. For many years, he's worked directly with a large portion of CLDA's membership, moving expedited freight and packages of all kinds for a varied industry client base. His career experiences include domestic air freight, international air freight, pharmaceutical distribution, expedited air cargo services. And in '97, he became the president of On the Go Cargo and created Complete Logistics Service. Ralph also spent 4 years on the board of directors of Express Delivery and Logistics Association, the XLA, before becoming vice president in 2016. And when the XLA and CLDA merged, Ralph joined the CLDA board of directors. Our second presenter today is Mr. Wally Devereaux, the vice president of cargo and charters at Southwest Airlines. Wally leads the industry's finest cargo and charters team, with employees dedicated to providing exceptional service and hospitality to the unique and important customers of Southwest Airlines. Wally started his career with Southwest as a customer service agent at Dallas Love Field and held various positions in ground operations, PR, and marketing before joining the cargo and charters team in 1999. He held a variety of positions in the department before being promoted to vice president of cargo and charters in 2022. We're very lucky to have him with us today. And our final presenter, Jason Rowland, is Director of Compliance at Ascendia USA. He leads all compliance and loss prevention initiatives for Ascendia, a major e-commerce and mail delivery company. Prior to joining Ascendia, Jason spent 11 years with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, most recently as a lead transportation security inspector. In that position, Jason worked to become a subject matter expert in the federal regulation of the passenger and cargo air transportation industry. During his time at DHS, he was responsible for training new inspectors and fostering a new generation of regulators for the DHS Office of Security Operations, and received an award in 2015 as Inspector of the Year. He also led a team of behavior detection officers and specialized in behavior analysis. Jason holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Scranton, as well as a master's degree from the Homeland Security Management Institute of Long Island University. As you can tell, we have a truly impressive panel with us today. And so I'd like to hand it off to Ralph Carruthers, president of On the Go Cargo, to start us off. Ralph.
Hello, my name is Ralph Carruthers, and I am president of On the Go Cargo and a member of the board of directors at the Customized Logistics and Delivery Association, or the CLDA. First off, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity. I'm here to introduce our association to you. Our goal here is to inform you of how CLDA represents the component parts of the logistics supply chain. The air cargo industry is a vital and of the global, The air cargo industry is a vital part of the global economy. And without it, the flow of commerce would be much reduced from where it is today. Our members are identified by the air cargo segments they represent. CLDA members are forwarders, airlines, and first and final mile carriers on the ground who represent the private industry sector that supports the air forwarding community. Historically, CLDA's advocacy activities have been mostly regulatory in nature, with a focus on air cargo security and compliance for our air forwarding members. Our legislative efforts at the federal and state levels have centered on policies and legislation around labor issues, like employee classification issues, which directly affect our first and final mile ground support members. CLDA members are present in every airport market in each of the areas of the logistics supply chain. We look forward to a continuing relationship with the Congressional Air Cargo Caucus as industry stakeholders. We want to improve the efficiency and flow of expedited commerce while working to improve security in all the areas where our members operate. We hope we can become a resource for this caucus, considering the scope of the sector we represent. To quote a statement by Cargo Airlines Association on their website regarding this caucus, the Air Cargo Caucus is an excellent venue for members to become educated about the industry and impact air cargo has on regions, states, and worldwide. CLDA concurs with this statement, and we hope to function as an ongoing resource and contributor to this aspect of the caucus. Regarding air cargo logistics, in the United States, contrary to popular belief, all expedited parcels, express air freight, or packages in general are not exclusively moved by the larger consolidators, shipping companies, or the larger e-commerce companies. Although private industry here is less well known, we represent a larger presence collectively, and we exist in all the same markets. A significant amount of air cargo moves through this private sector and is not exclusive to consolidators like FedEx and UPS. In fact, we easily match their presence and likely have 2 to 3 times the number of boots on the ground by comparison. A lot of air cargo commerce moves on passenger aircraft globally, with a significant presence in each of our domestic markets. The supply chain requires a great amount of ground support to keep commerce flowing. In a given airport market, there may be anywhere from a dozen to several hundred ground service companies providing a number of specialized services to support air commerce. As well, the type of air freight can differ. We can have extremely hot life sciences freight, which requires special handling, temperature control, and constant monitoring throughout its journey. And then we have easier, drier freight with obvious less urgency, but still under a specific time constraint. These shipments require more service than the average American may be aware of or would normally expect of a shipping company. We hope to communicate to you an understanding of what differentiates us operationally from standard shipping practices. CLDA represents a large and diverse segment of the logistics industry, which, when viewed together, can and does compare to the larger and more well-known consolidators. Next Flight Out services is a great example. A key difference between the standard concept of overnight consolidators and some of our members is the NFO service. This service is for shipping on the next available flight. In most cases, this is the next available passenger aircraft according to published schedules and could possibly require a charter if urgent enough. A parcel is picked up for a specific intended flight. The flight is met on arrival by an agent company and delivered directly to its destination. Some examples of items requiring this service include, again, life sciences, urgent aircraft parts for grounded aircraft, laboratory samples for testing, emergency parts, or anything deemed urgent enough to require the expense of shipping this way. Life science shipments can contain tissue samples or organs that have surgical staff waiting for their arrivals. They can be radioactive pharmaceuticals with as much urgency for their own purpose. During COVID, we had members involved in shipping PPE, supplies of all kinds, COVID tests to labs, and later vaccines for distribution. These shipments belong to our express air courier members globally and flown almost exclusively on commercial passenger aircraft. They are delivered by our ground service members to complete the same day next flight out service. Comparing us to larger overnight consolidators is appropriate enough visually in some cases. However, it's important to understand we mostly operate as independent components. As an industry, we have historically risen to exceed the expectations of our customers and sometimes ourselves. We most recently demonstrated that the expedited logistics industry provides an essential service at the community, state, and national levels. As far as our scalability, Disruptions of all types, whether a pandemic, economic, natural, or political disaster, can significantly impact services of any kind, and especially in the movement of air commerce. These past 2 years have tested us in so many unforeseen ways. There exists today a significant amount of pride in what we not only survived, but also learned the extent to which our capabilities allowed us to pivot and scale up or down as necessary. Industry now prepares more and better for risk mitigation and contingency plans to minimize the impacts of such disruptions. We have ground service members in the pharmaceutical distribution markets who displayed some of the most dramatic scalability in their role to supply medication to pharmacies and hospitals throughout the pandemic. These members took part in their normal role at 4 and 5 times normal capacity at times. I mention this as another example of the diversity of our membership and our essential service as a whole. Our association and its members want to add these lessons to our education efforts for continued growth and preparedness for all areas of logistics. Our regulatory legislative efforts, as vital members of the air cargo community, we look forward to contributing for the purpose of improving the flow of expedited cargo shipments of all kinds, while offering suggestions to improve security. We also hope for future conversations with you to explore answers that private industry may already have. We believe these ideas have the potential to expedite commerce and put security at the forefront of acceptance. We welcome future opportunities to discuss our industry with you all and hope you'll reach out to CLDA as a stakeholder in all the market segments that we represent. With that, I'll pass it back to Rosario to introduce our next speaker, and want to thank you, and we are very grateful for the opportunity for this relationship and look for it to be hopefully an ongoing thing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ralph. Now I'll turn it over to Wally Devereaux, the Vice President of Cargo and Charters at Southwest Airlines. Wally, the floor is yours.
Very good. Rosario, can you hear me?
Can hear you great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate the invitation, so thank you for that. And Ralph, I'm going to cover a few of the items that Ralph shared, but I'll talk to them more from a Southwest Airlines viewpoint versus maybe Ralph's viewpoint on the indirect air carrier side of the house. But as mentioned, my name is Wally Devereaux. I've been with Southwest Airlines for 30 years. I've done lots of different jobs at Southwest, but today I'm responsible for our cargo business and then also our passenger charter business. Two very different businesses at Southwest Airlines, and today I'll obviously be talking about the cargo side of the house. And in agreement really with what Ralph shared, I think a lot of times most folks, when they think about air cargo, they do think about integrated carriers like UPS and like FedEx and other members of the cargo airline association, who do an excellent job, by the way. But today I'll talk more along the lines of the passenger carriers moving cargo. And I think it does surprise a lot of people that passenger carriers do move freight, maybe a little less so on the international side of the house, but more so on the domestic side, especially when you think about the aircraft that tend to fly domestically, which aren't necessarily those wide body aircraft that you might picture freight being loaded on. So I think that does surprise folks. I also think the fact that Southwest Airlines flies cargo on our aircraft is very surprising to a lot of people, especially considering that we fly a narrow body fleet of 737 Boeing aircraft, but we do, and we actually have flown cargo on our aircraft for most of our 50-year history, which I think surprises people. So if you think about Southwest Airlines, we have several thousand flights per day, and each of those flights typically has capacity and weight available that we could then use for cargo, and so we use it. So after all of the passengers board an aircraft, and after all of their bags are on the aircraft and loaded as well, and after all of the fuel is accounted for on the aircraft from a weight standpoint, then typically we have space available to load cargo and to move it around our system. So we do that. We move cargo, as you can kind of see here from the picture. We move cargo just like we move bags throughout the system. So we don't move large containers on a Southwest Airlines aircraft. We don't really move palletized cargo on our aircraft. We'll break those kinds of things down, and we'll load cargo as individual pieces, just like we carry bags and load bags on the aircraft. And so when we transfer between one flight to the next, we actually transfer cargo from aircraft to aircraft as well. So it's very similar, and it's kind of in our DNA from a process standpoint in terms of loading cargo versus loading luggage. Very similar processes at Southwest. And I think Ralph said it well here. The one thing, you know, that passenger airlines like Southwest Airlines do, certainly in partnership with indirect air carriers, is that we offer speed, and we offer same day speed that really, in a lot of cases, you would only be able to get through maybe a charter option, which can certainly be very expensive. So there's lots of capacity, and we certainly offer speed. So there's oftentimes when tomorrow just is not fast enough. And in fact, many of the integrated carriers out there are actually customers of ours as well, and utilize us and other passenger carriers to move very critical same day type items around the system. So in terms of who we serve and what we carry, you know, Ralph did cover some of this well, but I think he's right in that the medical community is the thing that really resonates the most with people, and organs for transplant really kind of stands at the top of the list there. But you can see there are a lot of other things that move as cargo as well. And again, AOG parts is a critical element. Electronics like semiconductor chips, you know, for example, is critical. We've seen our e-commerce activity grow dramatically over the last couple of years, as you might imagine. But we also move a lot of perishable commodities as well, and that's probably likely something that maybe on-the-go cargo and Ralph and his team maybe do a little bit less of versus an airline like a Southwest. But we do move a lot of perishable commodities, so flowers and seafood and different things like that. And then we even move human remains on our aircraft. And when you think about that service, you know, especially in smaller communities, oftentimes Southwest provides the largest aircraft available in and out of a given market. So we might be the only option for families that need to move human remains around the country quickly versus driving for hours and hours to have to do something like that. So and then on top of that, we move the U.S. mail as well, along with a lot of other items. We've even moved rescue alligators in the past. So it's pretty amazing the different kinds of things that can wind up on our aircraft. But on any given day, when you wake up in the morning, from the clothes that you're wearing to the computer that you use to the mail in the mailbox and the flowers on the table and the dinner you had last night, a lot of those things wind up moving in the belly of a Southwest Airlines aircraft, and you just might not know that. So if we could go, Rosario, maybe, or Drew, to the next slide. Thank you, sir. You know, I think the reason shippers really use us, first of all, we have an excellent fleet of Boeing 737 aircraft, over 700 of those, and that continues to grow. But I really think the main thing when you think about why commercial passenger flights are so attractive for moving cargo is just the number of them that are out there. And just thinking about Southwest Airlines alone, we have over 3,500 flights per day around our network that have space available for cargo. And that is a pretty attractive thing, I think, to somebody that needs to move cargo, especially an indirect air carrier like on-the-go cargo, for example, with Ralph. And so we have a lot of redundancy. We have a lot of frequency between markets. We have a lot of creative ways that we can get something from point A to point B. And that certainly is helpful to shippers, but it also allows us to move things quickly because of that fact. So we serve over 100 destinations with from a cargo standpoint at Southwest, and typically in any given month we have about 200 million pounds of available lift or capacity or weight that we can offer to shippers. So it's quite a bit of space, and that's based on typically loading about 2,000 pounds of cargo on any given flight on any given day. So To my point earlier, we do move quite a bit of it. I know this isn't maybe that large compared to some of the integrated carriers that exist out there, but we did move over 1 million shipments in 2021, which is a pretty significant number. And then next slide there, group. So just a couple other items to talk about. You know, one of the things I think that's important to know here is that shipping on a commercial passenger airline isn't necessarily for everyone, and it's not necessarily designed, I don't think, to be easy for everyone to do either, just strictly from a security standpoint and a safety standpoint. And so to be able to ship on Southwest Airlines or any commercial passenger airline, you really only have two paths. And one of those is to become a known shipper with the airline, which we have companies that do. So they establish an account and they go through the TSA's known shipper process, or you can become an indirect air carrier like Ralph's organization, and then you would have to become known to them. And so there's not a scenario where somebody that's not known can come up and easily put cargo on a commercial passenger flight. But after you go through that process, then it gets to be a fairly easy and straightforward process. You choose the flights that you want, you choose the speed that you're interested in, you tender to any of our destinations, and we actually operate airport to airport from cargo facility to cargo facility, and then couriers and freight forwarders will bring cargo to those locations and kind of complete that pickup and delivery portion of that work. Everything that's loaded onto our aircraft is screened beforehand. So we 100% screen everything that's loaded on our flights. And then we scan everything that goes on, we scan everything that transfers, and we scan everything that goes off or comes off. And so you have real-time tracking information as well. And so once that journey is completed, then you pick it up at destination, and that's how it works. And so that's a very quick summary of kind of our business and some of the things that we do and why I think that it's important. So I guess in closing, maybe the next time you fly in us, and I hope you do, and if you do, thank you for doing that. But the next time you fly in us, if you check in late, like Ralph probably does, and you get that C boarding pass, then walk down there past the wing, because that's where you're headed. Anyway, walk past the wing, sit on the left-hand side of the aircraft, and you can look out the window, and it's very likely that you will see some cargo being loaded on the aircraft. So with that, I think I have one more slide here, but I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. Here's my contact information as well as our contact information for several folks within our governmental affairs team. And if you have any questions, we certainly would be happy to answer them. So please reach out. And I'll turn it back over to Rosario to introduce our last guest.
Thanks so much, Wally. Really appreciate that presentation. After our next speaker, we'll do some Q&A with the panel. And so I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity, if you have questions or have been developing questions, to go ahead and start populating them in the Q&A tab below. Just click on that button and type in your question, and we'll feed them to the presenters as we go. And so now I'd like to introduce our final speaker of the panel, Jason Rowland, the Director of Compliance at Ascendia. Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today, everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity to interact with you here. What I'll walk you through kind of first is a basic breakdown of the larger consolidator marketplace, as opposed to what Ralph kind of went through earlier, talking about lower level, smaller companies that build up smaller level consolidators for this kind of e-commerce material. Ascendia, my company, is one of the larger consolidators in the U.S., on par with DHL and FedEx. And with the slide here, you can see is the kind of breakdown for the larger companies, and then about a quarter of the market is $325 million. Is all broken up by smaller companies referenced by Ralph. So it's a very large piece of the market, and e-commerce is a exponentially growing part of the transportation industry. As we all know, COVID had a very large impact and a lot to do with that. Our internal projections put E-commerce growing to about 260 billion worldwide by 2026, which is exponential growth that we've seen since 2018, 2019. So 18% of a $2 billion domestic consolidator market is broken out between hundreds of different companies, and those companies employ hundreds of Americans, and they act as their security financially. So it's very important that these people have a voice and that their industry is heard, and that their job is taken very seriously, because it's regulated very highly. TSA does a lot of the regulation, and Homeland Security, Customs, everyone kind of has a piece of this from a regulatory standpoint. So a little bit about Ascendia. What we do is we are a large-scale parcel consolidator for e-commerce. We touch anywhere between 50 and 60 million parcels a year, specifically from e-commerce. We are also a screening facility. So as Wally mentioned before, as cargo is loaded onto passenger aircraft, either the airline will have the responsibility of screening it, or separate companies like ours, private companies, will have the ability to screen it and send it and tender it to the airline as screen material. So we screen ourselves about 30 million parcels a year of the 50 that we touch, that we screen ourselves, make sure that they're safe. And obviously there's a lot of regulation and oversight that goes along with having that ability. And it's something that we take very seriously and pride ourselves in and use to gain more customers as time goes on. E-commerce logistics is only a single piece of a much larger market that includes shipping platforms, purchasing software, all these companies that once had really strong brick and mortar presences. Now after COVID, they're starting, with the uptick in e-commerce, they're starting to rely less on brick and mortar sales and more on e-commerce sales. So marketplaces like Walmart, Etsy, eBay, Amazon, obviously the large ones, are starting to see exponential growth, and they don't necessarily have the proprietary network in place to deal with shipping it internationally. So that's where companies like myself and Ascendia come in, and we take on the burden of being the exporter of record. We take on the burden of fronting duties and tax when those shipments require it, when they go international, and then moving the material on our proprietary network within the US, and then utilizing airlines like Southwest and American and Delta and Lufthansa and a lot of the big carriers that go internationally. They have a lot of commercial flights, and we interact with couriers like Ralph's to move the material domestically, to deliver it to the airlines. And then we rely even more heavily on the airlines to fly that material to major hubs in the UK or in Asia, where that material is then accepted and sent to a hub that we have in the country there, to process it and get it ready for final mile delivery, so that person can finally get the item that they've ordered through whatever e-commerce platform that they've chosen. So no longer is it just kind of Amazon and eBay, who were always the big two. As the effects of COVID have really begun to level out, we're finding more and more smaller companies having large online presence. And it's a sign of the times when it comes to social media and the availability of material on people's phones and on the internet. The ability to order goods from your phone from anywhere is really changing the market and changing the industry here for us, leading to a much greater focus on e-commerce and those parcels that are ordered, and they expect them to be delivered quickly. They expect them to be intact and not damaged or lost during transit. And much like we expect things to show up at our door from Amazon within 18 to 24, 48 hours of delivery, I think that internationally we're starting to see the same expectations kind of hit U.S. exporters. They want things moved quickly. They don't want to wait 3 weeks for their deliveries to come into France from the U.S. or and that kind of a thing. So the standards are very high. We're always looking to cut down transit times and working with airlines on finding the best rates to fill their aircraft. Number one, to get space to be able to fill it, and then to get our material on that plane safely make sure that it is obviously safe for transport on a very highly regulated industry, and then move from there. So our relationship with consolidators, couriers, and air carriers is constantly changing. It's very dynamic, and it's something that we are very thankful for the opportunity to come and speak with you guys about today. And we look forward to continuing a dialogue and moving the industry forward and maybe modernizing some of the regulatory requirements that are out there right now from the TSA and Homeland in order to kind of bring the industry to a more modern e-commerce standard that applies and kind of allow us for the free flow of that material in a more efficient and safe manner. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Rosario.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was great. Again, a big thank you to Wally and Ralph for their presentations, and for Congresswoman Bustos for her lead off of today's conversation. So we'll go to Q&A, continue to populate the Q&A tab with your questions. And I'll just sort of begin with the panel and ask for all of our presenters, just kind of what did the COVID-19 pandemic sort of do to your shipment volumes, and how did it affect your organizations? Certainly, we all had a sense of supply chain impacts, but as noted by several of the presenters, as consumers of goods shipped by air cargo, for many of us, we didn't notice much of a difference. So what was it like on your side of the house during the pandemic? Ralph, or anyone else, you have some thoughts?
Well, I would say from my side of the pandemic, it went from when the shutdown first hit, there was that initial shock. And then things went from 0 to 60, back to 20, up to 80, back down to 20. Volumes were just fluctuating until we reached somewhat consistent levels. But there were some times where there was some pretty long gaps for us. So, I mean, during the immediate gross shutdown, when a lot of the airlines had a lot of planes, and Wally could probably speak to that, where they had to ground a lot of planes because, again, passenger aircraft depended on passengers that weren't flying, I would guess. So that affected us. And what that did for us was made us send more stuff, ship more items on the ground, longer distances than we normally would have in the past. So all kinds of different variations and adjustments were made. A lot of lessons were learned. I think Wally might be able to tell you about the 0 to 60 piece of it, with going when things started to come back. But for the basis of it, we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about our capabilities, and we also learned to put some of these plans and work on them even a little bit more. God forbid we find ourselves in any other similar situations.
Thanks, Ralph. Wally, you've been invited into this part of the conversation. What was the impact for Southwest Cargo and Charter?
It was interesting. On the cargo side of the house, maybe, and I don't know if this would be surprising or not, but you've heard a lot about this significant increase in volume, and actually early on, really the first 60 days or so of the pandemic really kind of taking hold, we saw a pretty dramatic decrease in our air cargo volume, but simply because businesses closed and restaurants closed and events were canceled, and a lot of the things that we move tend to support those kinds of activities or those kinds of businesses and things like that. And so what then you saw, you went from a kind of a typical makeup of different kinds of commodities that we've historically carried. A lot of those that we've historically carried were dramatically reduced, and that was then offset by the significant increase we saw in e-commerce related goods, the significant increase in medical related items, and there were others, too, that performed actually fairly well too, that grew during that period of time. So the end result was that our cargo volume was quite a bit higher, especially when we got into the 2021 timeframe. So I think the interesting thing for us too was, and Ralph kind of mentioned this, our schedule was dramatically different. So prior to that, we were really close to a 4,000 flight per day operation, and the schedule was reduced significantly. And even with that, we just didn't have a lot of passengers flying at that period of time. And so while we didn't have as many flights, we also didn't have, the normal passenger loads that we might have, and therefore the normal baggage loads that we would normally have. And so we were able to load a lot of cargo on a per flight basis because we really kind of had empty space underneath. So you didn't maybe have the flight that you ideally wanted, but we could still get things from point A to point B through maybe different routes just because we had so much space available underneath. So I think the thing that that really always will stand out to me is just the thought that, or really the fact that our team really rallied around cargo and the importance of cargo, and the kinds of things that we were moving on our aircraft were so critical. And even early on when test kits were developed for COVID, we were delaying flights and markets to make sure that they were loaded, and the few people that might have been on the aircraft would applaud that we were taking delay to do something like that. So it was really just an interesting time, but I will certainly remember that. But that's kind of my recollection.
Thanks, Wally.
And
Jason?
for the record, if I can just jump in, and I'm not sure how
Please.
Wally knew this, but I am a Category C boarding pass person.
I just kind of had that feeling, Ralph. I had that feeling.
I give that impression, I think.
We appreciate you flying us, sir, either way.
Thanks, Ralph. Jason?
Yeah, the biggest impact that we had from COVID was difficulty with uplift, right? So a lot of the major international carriers dropped the number of flights that they were having, which obviously puts space at a premium. With the uptick in the amount of material we were seeing ordered for delivery, with the low amount of uplift that we saw, it was very hard for large scale consolidators to get material on aircraft, to book it at a reasonable price, to get it to move it internationally. So, and then as in some countries shut down entirely, we weren't allowed to send things at all, depending on what country that it was going to. So all of those things kind of made for a very difficult marketplace. A profitable one, to say the least, because of the amount, the increase in volume that we saw, but difficult nonetheless to meet those standards and to deliver a product that still is efficient and worth it for the customer to order. So very difficult times, but now we're starting to see volumes kind of level out. If anything, kind of even recede a little bit in the last couple of months here, but I think that's as a result of some other economic issues that we're seeing as a country right now. But all in all, we're very hopeful for the future, and the volume's kind of only going higher from here. And but COVID still, the effects of that have still kind of not completely finished. So as volume continues to grow and we get more flights back and more international flights come online, it should only get easier. But during the last 2 years, it was exceedingly difficult to move material efficiently and because of the lack of uplift that we saw.
Thanks, Jason, Wally, and Ralph. That was sort of a great education on the experiences of this industry during the pandemic. So, as you look back on that, and as you're thinking forward, what do you see as still some critical challenges or obstacles to the maximum efficiency of this kind of air cargo movement, especially as we continue to have issues throughout the supply chain, certainly as inflation has its impacts on the economy, as well as the continuing rise of e-commerce and maybe changed consumer preferences for direct home purchase versus at retail. What sort of all those forces that have been at work, what are the kinds of things that you note and that that you think are important for our colleagues listening today to know about?
So I think one of the most important things for the e-commerce industry there is the regulations that we have to follow in order to follow the no shipper program, like that Wally mentioned. There are a lot of regulations in place right now that make it really difficult for marketplaces to operate, being as opposed to a single seller selling a product to a final mile individual. What we have are these marketplaces where individuals are selling items out of their homes on a platform like Etsy, like eBay, and moving that material in a known shipper scenario is very difficult. And it leads to a lot of difficulty and slows the process down in an environment where marketplaces are becoming more of the norm as opposed to the exception. I think the industry needs to change a little bit there to be a little more marketplace friendly. And as individuals are fulfilling these e-commerce orders out of their homes, as opposed to stores doing it on their websites or on their shipping platforms, marketplaces like Etsy and Wish and even Amazon to a certain extent, a lot of people don't realize that material is coming out of somebody's garage. It's coming out of their home, that they're selling it to you from there. So there's really no way in the industry to make every individual who has the ability to sell something on a marketplace a known shipper. So that kind of hole in the regulations is creating a little bit of difficulty, and it will continue to as the volumes grow into the future.
And I think it's exactly scenarios like that that make this relationship between the industry and this Air Cargo Caucus. There's a lot of private industry recommendations that can be made to streamline the flow of air commerce and adding to the security level. There's plenty of open suggestions that we can make that would help things out exponentially, we believe. So, I mean, after the introduction, we look forward to anyone with interest there to reach out to us and see if we can, maybe start to, get some of that help that we might appreciate.
Thanks, Ralph. Wally, did you have some thoughts as well?
I don't know that I would add a whole lot more to what Ralph and Jason shared there. I think, Jason did bring up the point earlier about capacity and the marketplace. And I think the one pain point that we probably still exists to some degree is that flight schedules aren't quite back to what was normal. So capacity still is a bit constrained. And so something that, in higher demand markets, especially with a lot of times those markets are common markets between multiple shippers. And so that can be a little bit of a struggle at times. But I do think, that will certainly continue to improve. It has been improving and will continue to do so. So that's probably a little bit of a pain point that Ralph and Jason might agree with.
And Wally, just curious if Southwest or others or other industry associations, airlines and air cargo industry, have offered some thoughts about when we expect in the future to return to sort of pre-pandemic flight schedules. Is that in the far distant future? Is that near? Sort of what are airlines publicly saying about volumes and daily flights?
I can't probably speak to that too specifically, but I do generally would say that we do intend to grow. We do intend to add aircraft to our fleet, and so we over time things will continue to improve. I'd probably have to get someone else to respond specifically to that if you want some more information there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I just ask generally too, do any of the panelists have any questions of each other? Was there something during today's presentations that sparked a thought about the kind of collaboration and cooperation between different parts of this industry and sector that you think are kind of worth some further discussion as well. Ralph?
I think we know each other pretty well, and we've worked together for a lot of years. So I don't know that we have too many questions about this specifically, but I'll leave it open to anybody else.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So then I'd offer an opportunity to the panel for closing thoughts. Where do we go from here? What's next for the air cargo industry? What should we be looking for in the future?
You know, I might share one thought here, and I do think, and I think we tried to make this point up front, but it really is important for folks to know that air cargo isn't just about integrated operations. It's a very, very important part of moving freight in the U.S. market or globally. Relies heavily on the use of passenger aircraft, and so it's just important. You know, if I could ask, you know, just one thing or make one point, it would be to remember that, because you just oftentimes many folks just don't realize the kind of important items that rely heavily and very critical items, life-saving items that rely heavily on the use of passenger aircraft and partners like On-the-Go Cargo and certainly others. And so I just think it's always important to remember that fact. And if we accomplish that here, I think that would certainly be a great thing.
That's the best endorsement I've gotten all year. Thank you, Wally.
Okay, Jason,
I would say,
please.
Yeah, I would just add that I think as social media also plays a big role here too, as people are able to order material off Facebook, off their phone as they're in the park, or order something off of Instagram that they want delivered, that they saw that they liked. I think as social media continues to grow and become more prevalent in our society, I think the e-commerce is only going to continue to grow higher from there. And I think needing to adjust the way that we've done business up until now really doesn't fit that kind of a model. So I think going forward, that's going to be kind of the future, is how we adjust to that paradigm and how we make the current situation a little more efficient and a little more fluid, so that people can order things from the park and expect it in a couple of days and get it. And whether that person lives in Des Moines or Damascus, I think we should work towards the goal of getting it as quick and smooth as possible.
That's great. Ralph, any concluding thoughts?
Again, just to reiterate what Wally was saying, the urgency of a caucus like this to have the understanding of, you know, who we are, how many different levels of industry and their own components, putting together the whole package, and with the CLDA representing us more on that level as a bigger picture of a full logistics offering. That's important for us to make sure that we get that message across, and that industry does have you know, opinions and recommendations that we think can really help both the flow and the security of cargo, as well as the safety of passengers on aircraft.
Well, thank you, Ralph Carruthers, Jason Rowland, and Wally Devereaux for an excellent presentation today. I think it was a really good introduction to a number of these issues, and I know we're also dealing with an incredibly sophisticated audience in the Air Cargo Caucus, and so we want to thank all of our guests and all of the member offices that are participants in this caucus, and a big thank you to Congresswoman Sherry Bustos and Congressman Brian Mast, the co-chairs of the Air Cargo Caucus, for giving us this opportunity to bring you all together and to share a little bit more with you about these issues in this industry. And just as an additional note, the Customized Logistics and Delivery Association, you can find more about our organization association at clda.org. And we welcome your additional comments, questions, and feedback. This was a great opportunity to be with you all. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we wish you all a pleasant week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dario.